There is a coastline in southwestern Turkey where the cliffs are full of doors, not caves, not erosion, doors, rectangular, carefully framed, sometimes with columns carved beside them, sometimes with relief sculptures above them, built into vertical rock faces 50 and 100 feet above the ground. Behind those doors are tombs, and behind those tombs is one of the most distinctive, most independent, and most consistently underestimated civilizations of the ancient Mediterranean world. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring archaeological reconstructions, ancient reliefs, and historical maps to life, moving through these places in ways that static images never could. The goal is not just to look at what the Lycians left behind, it's to step into it, to walk through their cities, understand their politics, and ask the question that their cliffside tombs demand. Who were the people who built these, and why did they choose to spend their greatest resources on the dead? If you stay until the end, we'll look at what remains of Lycia today, and some of it will surprise you. Before we enter any Lycian city, it helps to understand the land itself, because Lycia is inseparable from its geography. The region occupies the southwestern tip of Anatolia, the peninsula we now call Turkey, bounded on two sides by the Mediterranean Sea, and on the third by a spine of rugged mountains that made overland access difficult and seaborne connection natural. This was not fertile lowland. It was rocky, forested, dramatically beautiful terrain that rewarded people who were tough and self-sufficient and punished everyone who tried to control it from the outside. That geography shaped everything. The Lycians were never an easy people to conquer, and when they were conquered, by Persians, by Macedonians, by Romans, they had a habit of remaining distinctly themselves, regardless of who technically held the territory. Their language survived Persian rule. Their political institutions survived Macedonian rule. Their cultural identity survived Roman rule. They bent repeatedly and broke almost never. This image shows the Lycian coast as it appeared from the sea, the approach that most ancient visitors would have taken. Rocky headlands drop into deep blue water. Forested slopes rise sharply inland. And here and there, visible even from a distance, the cliff faces show the rectangular cuts of tomb facades. You would have known, approaching this coast, that you were entering somewhere with its own rules. The Lycians appear in written records as early as the Bronze Age. The Hittites called them the Luca and described them as raiders and mercenaries operating along the Anatolian coast. Homer mentions them in the Iliad as allies of Troy, led by Sarpedon and Glaucus, noble fighters from a distant western land. Whether those specific figures were historical is uncertain. That Lycians were present in the eastern Mediterranean world during the Bronze Age and were considered significant enough to name is not. This reconstruction shows the city of Xanthos at its height, the most important city in ancient Lycia, and the closest thing the Lycians had to a capital. It sat on a ridge above the Xanthos River, with the valley spreading out below it, and the mountains visible on every side. The city had a proper acropolis, an agora, temples, a theatre. By Hellenistic and Roman times, it looked in many ways like a standard Mediterranean city. But what made Xanthos distinctively Lycian was everywhere around the public spaces. The tombs. Lycian tombs came in several forms: rock-cut facades carved directly into cliff faces, pillar tombs, tall rectangular shafts of stone with burial chambers on top, sarcophagi raised on high pedestals, sometimes elaborately carved with battle scenes and mythological figures, and house tombs carved to look exactly like the wooden houses the Lycians lived in, gabled roofs, log-end details, everything reproduced in stone. That last type is significant. The Lycians didn't just bury their dead, they gave them permanent houses. They imagined the afterlife as a continuation of domestic life, only rendered in materials that would not rot. Imagine walking through Xanthos in the 2nd century BCE, through a city where the living and the dead occupied the same visual space, where every public area was surrounded by monuments to families going back generations. The dead were not hidden, they were displayed. This image focuses on the Nereid Monument, one of the most extraordinary funerary structures from the ancient world, built at Xanthos around 380 BCE for a Lycian dynast named Arbinas. It stood roughly 30 feet tall, a raised tomb chamber on a high podium, with Ionic columns around it, and between those columns, this is the part that stops you, carved marble figures of women in wind-blown drapery, arms raised, caught mid-movement. Those figures are the Nereids, sea nymphs, and they appear to be carrying something invisible, perhaps the soul of the deceased, toward whatever came next. The monument was removed by British archaeologists in the 1840s and reassembled in the British Museum, where much of it still sits today. The site where it stood in Xanthos is now an empty podium. But the monument itself survives, and in extraordinary detail. The friezes show battle scenes, siege warfare, hunting, feasting, an entire life compressed into stone, a biography in relief. Whoever commissioned this wanted to be remembered completely. This scene shows the Lycian League, and it deserves more attention than it usually gets, because what the Lycians built politically was genuinely unusual in the ancient world. By the 2nd century BCE, the cities of Lycia had organized themselves into a federation, the first democratic federation in recorded history, according to some scholars, and the direct inspiration that the American founding fathers cited when designing the structure of the United States Congress. The League had a central assembly where representatives from member cities voted on shared decisions. Cities were weighted by size. The largest cities got 3 votes, medium cities 2, smaller ones 1. The assembly elected a federal leader, the Lyciarch, and federal magistrates. Cities retained local autonomy. Defense and foreign policy were handled collectively. This was not an empire with a dominant city extracting from subordinate ones. It was a genuine attempt at representative federal governance among equals. Montesquieu wrote about it. James Madison referenced it in the Federalist Papers. The Lycian League was not simply a historical curiosity. It was a working model that people designing constitutions in the 18th century took seriously as evidence that federation could function. The people who carved tombs into cliffs also invented one of the foundational concepts of modern democracy. This image shows Patara, Lycia's primary coastal city and the birthplace, according to tradition, of St. Nicholas, the historical figure behind Santa Claus. Patara had one of the finest natural harbours on the southern Anatolian coast and served as the main port through which Lycian trade moved. It was also the site of a famous oracle of Apollo, second in prestige only to Delphi, to which kings and generals sent questions they needed answered. The city's ruins today are extraordinary, a triumphal arch still standing at the entrance to the site, a Roman granary, a lighthouse base, a theatre half buried in sand dunes that drift in from the coast. The sand has preserved things that exposure would have destroyed. Excavations are still ongoing. Patara is still giving up what it has been keeping. This reconstruction shows the cliff tombs of Myra, perhaps the most visually striking single site in all of Lycia. The cliff face rises sharply above the ancient theatre, and cut into that cliff at multiple levels are dozens of tomb facades, each one carved as a doorway, with architectural details, columns, pediments, relief carvings, rendered in stone as if for a building meant to be entered. Some of them have painted traces remaining in the carved details. In their original state, bright colours against white limestone against blue sky, the effect must have been startling. The logic of putting tombs high on cliff faces is not fully resolved in the scholarship. Prestige is part of it. The higher and more prominent the tomb, the more visible the family's status. Protection from tomb robbers is part of it. And there may have been a cosmological dimension, a belief that elevation brought the dead closer to something, the sky, the divine, a transitional space between worlds. Whatever the reasoning, the result is a landscape where the dead look down on the living from every direction, permanent presences above a city that has long since emptied. The Lycian language deserves a moment here, because it is one of the most important linguistic puzzles of the ancient world. It belongs to the Anatolian branch of the Indo-European family, related to Hittite and Luwian, which makes it one of the oldest recoverable language lineages in the world. The Lycians wrote it in their own alphabet, adapted from Greek but distinct. Inscriptions appear on tombs, on monuments, in bilingual texts that helped scholars decode it. What's remarkable is that the Lycian language survived as long as it did. Under Persian rule, Lycians continued writing in Lycian. Under Macedonian rule, Greek became dominant, but Lycian continued alongside it. The language appears in texts well into the Hellenistic period, centuries after most regional languages had been absorbed by Greek. A people who maintained their own script and language under centuries of foreign rule are making a statement about identity that requires no translation. By the Roman period, Lycia had been incorporated into the empire, and the Lycian League had been dissolved and reconstituted several times. But the Lycians remained recognizably Lycian. Roman Lycia built theatres and baths and roads in the standard Roman manner, and the cities prospered under the stability of imperial rule. Xanthos, Patara, Myra, Tlos, Pinara. These were functioning, wealthy Mediterranean cities well into late antiquity. The decline came gradually with the general collapse of late antique urban life, accelerated by Arab raids on the coast in the 7th and 8th centuries CE, and completed by the shift of trade routes that left once thriving ports without the commerce that had sustained them. The cities emptied slowly, the population retreating inland or dispersing. The forests moved back. The sand dunes moved in over Patara, and the tombs remained exactly where they had always been, because they were carved into rock, and rock does not go anywhere. Now I want to bring you into the present. The Lycian Way is a long-distance walking trail that runs for roughly 540 kilometers along the southwestern Turkish coast, threading through the ruins of ancient Lycian cities, past cliff tombs visible from the path, along coastline that looks much as it would have looked 2,000 years ago. It is consistently rated among the finest long-distance hiking trails in the world. You can walk from ruin to ruin across terrain the Lycians themselves traveled. The tombs are above you for much of the route. Xanthos is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The ruins spread across a ridge above the modern road, the theatre still recognizable, the Acropolis still elevated, the empty podium where the Nereid Monument stood still marking the place where one of the ancient world's great funerary sculptures once rose. Myra's theatre and cliff tombs receive visitors today, the tombs still as arresting as they must always have been, dozens of carved doorways above the seats of the theatre, the dead and the audience facing the same direction. At Patara, archaeologists are still excavating. The triumphal arch still stands at the site entrance. The lighthouse base still marks where ships once took their bearings. And the sand dunes are still moving, still covering, still preserving what hasn't been found yet. The Lycians built their tombs to last, and the tombs lasted. They carved their dead into cliffs because they understood that stone outlives everything else, and they were right. The civilization that built them has been gone for 15 centuries. The doors in the cliff faces are still there, still open, still asking you to think about who put them there and why. Thanks for being here. If you have thoughts or places you want to see next, leave them in the comments. Let's keep going. This video is brought to you by the Paladin Learn History app. Scan the QR code to learn more history.